Hello, welcome. Welcome, hello. Just have my coffee here with me today, so if you hear me slurping on it, I apologize. I hope you can hear me okay with this mic. Today's been going pretty well. I'm a bit tired. Honestly, I think I'm going through a bit of burnout at the moment. Maybe that's something we can talk about, but I tend to cycle through it, I find, every couple of months-ish. I think I just tend to go really hard when I do my work and even just socializing. And then I kind of burn out because I forget that I'm an introvert with naturally low energy. And I'm getting better at recognizing it before it gets too far. But sometimes it catches up to me. So I feel like this month in particular has been a little bit more tiring than I intended it to be. But again, I'm trying to take advantage of the summer while we have it here. So it's kind of like the sacrifice I have to make, you know? Before we know it, it's going to be a Canadian winter again, and then I'll be complaining about that. So, but yeah, I'm kind of going through a bit of just a burnout-ish, a bit tired. How's everyone else doing? Yeah, that's why I have my coffee with me today. So I need a little bit of a boost as we go through this. Yeah, feel free to ask any questions. I don't really have any specific topics for today. I think the only thing I really wanted to kind of talk about a little bit is maybe my recent podcast episode. So if anyone doesn't know, I have a podcast. It's called Nobody's Doing It Right. It's on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And I just released an episode about being a bad person. And I feel like that's kind of something that I've been thinking about a lot lately because of the work I do. And I think my platforms are growing a bit more, and I wanted to just emphasize the fact that, like, despite this work that we all are doing, anybody I guess who's part of my audience, you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna be flawed in all the ways that you're trying to be better at, and that's okay, and that's part of the process. And you're not like you're not a bad person, even though it feels like that. And ultimately, as a human, you will be bad sometimes, and that's part of it. So if you haven't listened to that episode, feel free to go check that out and let me know what you think. Not right now, of course, after this live, hopefully. Have you watched Superman yet? No, I haven't. I'll be honest, I'm kind of going through a bit of a fatigue with superhero movies. I enjoy them. I think they're fun, and I've definitely watched like so many of them throughout the years. I just, after a while, it's kind of like, how many times are we going to have to watch the world be threatened and have a superhero fight for it, you know? But I'm obviously like, I don't know what this one's like. It might be completely different in terms of themes and story and stuff. But yeah, I probably will watch it. But I recently watched Sinners in theaters. Loved that. The absolute favorite movie of the year, I think. So good. And I watched Materialists, which I didn't like as much as I thought I would. It didn't really hit on I don't know, the plot wasn't exactly what I would have wanted for kind of a rom-com, even though it wasn't really a rom-com. It was kind of like a dramedy, I guess you would say. It wasn't really super funny, but it was enjoyable, but just like didn't quite, I don't know. I don't know if anyone else has watched it. Let me know your thoughts. As a coach yourself, what's one lesson that life keeps trying to teach you? It's probably that, the idea of like, you're gonna be a bad person, even if you try your best not to be in some way. Like, the point is to try your best to learn, to improve, to grow, to learn your lessons, to apologize, to hold yourself accountable, and yet you can do all the work in the world and you will still somehow manage to do something that puts you back in the place that you once were, making the same mistake, being a bad friend, saying something mean, unintentionally. You know, maybe it feels real in the moment, it feels appropriate in the moment, and then you look back on it and go, oh, it doesn't quite make me feel like the person I want to be. That's the biggest lesson, you know? And I think I want to emphasize that, especially to anybody who watches me and looks at my content and thinks I've somehow mastered being this like self-aware guru, and I never slip up, and I know all the things. Everything I create is a refined version of myself, but myself in this realm of my life, right? This, like the mindfulness, self-awareness, this realm, all the content I create is a refined version of that. Not to say it's fake or untrue. It's exactly what I'm going through and what I have gone through and learned, but it's me packaging it concisely and clearly but that's not how I learned it. The way I've learned those things was messy and chaotic and uncomfortable. And I continue to do that. And that's how I continue to make the work that I do. So that's, I think, the biggest lesson that I've learned and continue to learn as a coach, as somebody who coaches, who writes, who shares ideas and information and knowledge and all that stuff. He blocked me on everything except LinkedIn. He always goes and comes back, but I'm sure if he'll be coming back. LinkedIn is so funny. I guess you wouldn't think to block someone on LinkedIn. I think the question in this scenario is, why would you want someone to keep coming back? If they keep going, you already know that if they come back, that means they're going to go again. Where you're kind of seeing the pattern, you're understanding what's happening here. So why do you want that? I think that would be a better question to ask yourself. He said that he thinks we have no connection after we have been talking on and off for 2 years. That is interesting, right? Why is it 2 years of on and off talking? Again, it's like that 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You've seen the pattern here. The question is, do you like the pattern? Because the pattern is what you're getting, right? There's a potential there, sure. There might be a little bit of a fantasy, but the pattern is the reality. What does anticipating your partner's needs actually mean, in your opinion? I think it's about understanding, based on who that person is, what they've told you and what they've shown you about themselves, knowing what they might probably like. Obviously, you can't read people's minds, so there is a level of communication that needs to happen. But it's also, you need to be aware and perceptive of somebody and who they are and what they do, enough to know that this is what they would want or need from you, from anybody. I think that makes a huge difference in connection and relationships. Again, you're not going to be perfect at it. You're going to miss certain things. You're going to slip up, obviously. But I think that's what it comes down to, right? Anticipating your partners. Now, it shouldn't be from the perspective of like a parent figure or a caretaker, because that is kind of, I think, a lot of people with maybe unhealed wounds, like parental wounds, or maybe chaotic relationships with their parents in the past, might be looking for that kind of figure in their partners, which is not healthy, in my opinion. Or even in their friends at times, I don't think that's a healthy dynamic to have. So you don't want to believe that someone can anticipate your needs the way a parent can, right? The way a mother can. Because that's internal work that needs to be done. It's very much rooted in those core wounds, like core parental wounds, attachment styles, like that's where that comes from. But I do think, to an extent, yeah, your partner who you're growing and wanting to build something with, potentially, right? Whatever dynamic you're looking for, should be able to anticipate something about who you are and the things that you need based on watching you, listening to you, and also you, on the other hand, should be communicative and able to show yourself, show who you are. And I think that's also really hard. And I think that's part of what we need to hold ourselves accountable about. Like, are you being open enough with somebody? Are you sharing yourself? Are you expressing yourself? Or are you not doing that, but still expecting them to understand and anticipate? Like, that's not fair. But, people who struggle with feeling like they can't take up space or shouldn't share who they are struggle doing that, but then they still want someone to anticipate their needs, but then that person doesn't have any foundation to know how to do that. So that creates, really, I think, sometimes toxic relationships, but maybe relationships that aren't growing and connecting as much as they could be, So just for anybody who doesn't know how these lives go, whenever I pause, I'm trying to look through the comments. They all kind of update at once. I'm trying my best to answer all the comments, unless they are inappropriate or more statements. If they're not a question, I'm probably not going to answer them unless they're a statement that I think would be helpful to talk about in more depth. If I answer your question, I probably won't answer it again, just because I want to give enough time to everybody's questions here. But these lives will be saved over on my YouTube page. So some will be for everybody, some will be for members only, which I think would be a great way to support my content and my work. If you would like to do that, I would really appreciate it. So yeah, everything will be saved afterwards. So if you miss it, if I answer your question and you had to tune out for a little bit, it'll be there. So yeah, go follow me on YouTube. I'm not sure how to move on. Been crying 3 weeks for nonstop. This is about the person who you've been having an on and off, back and forth type of relationship. I think, again, the question is what is really actually there for you that is keeping you attached to it? Because you're seeing the pattern of someone leaving, coming back, leaving, coming back. What is it about this that's keeping you attached? This is an attachment, because what you're really doing is reinforcing this behavior and the belief that this is what you deserve. Why? Sinners was fire, super unexpected. Yeah, I absolutely loved it. I didn't know much about it going into it. I love approaching movies like that. I don't want to know anything about it. I don't want to watch trailers. I want to be surprised. I just knew that it was about vampires and that Michael B. Jordan was in it, which is love both of those things. But yeah, I went into it completely just blind in many ways, and it was amazing. I watched that. I also watched Bring Her Back. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm a big horror fan. And I liked it. I didn't like it as much as Talk to Me. It was an interesting story. I think it could have been better, but I know people loved it, which is valid. It was still very good elevated horror. I really appreciated it. I feel I will never find anyone else to feel a connection like I did with him. I really liked him. Okay, so that is scarcity. That's scarcity. That's feeling like this is the only person, and that the only reason you feel that way really is because it's just been going on for so long. So right now your brain is attached to this person as, oh, this is the only person then, because why would we keep going back if it wasn't the right person or the only person that we can have this true connection with? You're kind of convincing yourself of this truth by going back every time. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It doesn't mean it's true. And if you could connect with this person who was once a stranger to you, why wouldn't you be able to connect with someone else who's also a stranger to you right now, who could be someone you connect with deeply? Yeah, of course, you won't have the same exact connection, in its nuances and intricacies, but maybe in terms of the way it feels for you and the way you understand yourself in it, I'm sure you'll have that with somebody else. Like, there's no way. It would be so strange if you would never be able to connect with somebody again. And this is something that I have to remind myself of. This is the wording I use to get myself out of these headspaces when I get into them as well. It's like, why do you think you're so special that you wouldn't be able to find connection again, right? It's like kind of like an inverse self-worth talk with yourself. Sometimes we feel not good enough. So we think, oh, this thing's not going to happen to me because I'm not good enough. But really what you're saying is that you're so special that you would have the worst possible thing happen to you more than anybody else in the world. Why would you feel that way about yourself, right? Why does that mean? So you, on the one hand, yeah, we're all special, we're all great. And on the other hand, we're not that special that you wouldn't be able to ever find connection again, right? Like when we say it like that, I'm sure it sounds a bit silly to think it, but I know it can feel true in the moment. So I want to validate that feeling for you because I get it. I've been there myself, but it doesn't mean it's true just because it feels true right now. Just because it feels like that's the only thing you've been experiencing so far. You know what I mean? I'm sure someone that studied classics, Sinners was a pure gem to you. Yeah, it was really great. I feel like it had a lot more American history to it. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I don't know. I can't say anything like bad about that movie. It was just so good. Maybe I should start like an alternate TikTok account where I just talk about like my favorite movies. But not that I have like the skills or knowledge in cinema or film to, I think, to properly articulate myself. Current TV shows you're watching, really enjoying Shrinking on Apple TV. Oh, I haven't really been watching. I mean, I have been watching. Okay, so the one I binge watched very recently was From. Again, I'm a horror fan, so fantastic show. Loved it. Yeah, that one's really good. I just finished the last season, so I'm just waiting for the new one now, which is so sad. I've started watching Too Much. That one's okay. I'm enjoying it. It's kind of quirky and funny. What else? Oh, I've also started watching Conversations with Friends because I'm reading the book right now. So I'm kind of watching, as I progress through the book, I'll watch an episode that kind of gets to the point where I'm reading, which has been kind of a fun experience. Yeah, what else? That's kind of it. I just kind of bounce between shows sometimes. I really want to start The Wire because I hear that's really good. And it's one of those shows where it's like everyone I talk to about it says it's the best show. So yeah, I think I'm probably going to start that soon. But I feel like that's kind of more of an intense show and a bit more of a commitment. So we'll see. How do you overcome commitment issues? I mean, there's a few ways to approach it, right? It's like first understanding why you fear commitment, right? If you can understand what it is, then you can work with it. You can understand what tools you need to use to help you navigate through it. So as an example, like say you fear commitment because you fear being tied to something and it's the wrong thing and you find out later down the line and now you've wasted all this time and so whatever. Really, no matter what you commit to, it's going to be wrong in some way. Everything good is also bad in its own way, right? It's the yin and the yang. And so no matter what you commit to, at a certain point you will look at it, it's not going to be perfect at the end of the day. It's not going to be perfect. That ties into perfectionism as well. You fear committing because you want to wait for the perfect thing, whether it's a relationship, a project, job, whatever. There is no perfect thing. And I know that's hard to hear and accept, but it's the only way out of this. It's the only way through the commitment issue to actually start committing. If you can truly accept that there is no perfect thing, then you can commit to something that is just good enough, like whatever good enough means to you, what you're willing to accept with all its imperfections and the sacrifices you have to make with it. That's how you work through that. But there are a variety of reasons why we have commitment issues. So it's important to understand what that is for you, because that'll be then how you navigate through it. So if you want to give an example, we can work through that too here. What do you think is the best way to get inspiration? I love long walks where you're not listening to anything. It's just you alone with your thoughts, which I think is kind of difficult for a lot of people, from what I've heard. But I think that's the best. That's how all my inspiration comes to me. When I was first starting TikTok and I would make a lot of videos all the time, the way I was coming up with ideas was I would go on a long walk. And this was like during COVID too, so when we couldn't even really go outside or do anything with people as much, I would just go on long walks and I would come up with ideas and I would jot them down in my notes app. And and I still think that is the best way for me. I will also say journaling. You're just digging through your thoughts and seeing what comes up or what's been kind of hidden beneath all of them. Also consuming art of any kind. I think that really helps too. Yeah, those are the main things that I tend to use. What's the difference between love and attachment, and how can we tell the difference in real time? I mean, love and attachment aren't different necessarily, right? Because you attach to people and you can also love them. So it doesn't have to be one or the other. But what I'm understanding is that how do you know it is love from like a healthy, authentic place and love from an attached, kind of unhealthy, insecure place, right? And I think when it comes to the attachment side of things, it is born of insecurity, right? If you're trying to maintain a connection with somebody or a relationship and it's coming from a place of needing validation, approval, to feel safe because they've chosen you or whatever. Of course, you should feel safe in all your relationships. But what I mean is feeling like you are good enough because this person is choosing you, whether a friend, romantic partner, whatever. That is attachment, right? It is stemming from your attachment wounds or your attachment style that was implanted in you, that was created when you were a child. And that's different because when we're talking about love in the sense of like authentic, genuine, healthy love, it's not coming from insecurity. It's not coming from a place of needing approval, validation to feel good enough and worthy. You're connecting with somebody and loving them because, well, that is what humans do, right? And also it's because it is just, it's not a requirement for your self-worth to be in that relationship and dynamic. Of course, it helps our self-worth. It helps our self-esteem to be with people that are healthy for us. Another sign is, with attachment, sometimes we'll be trying to find people who validate us and make us feel good enough, but then maybe they're not the healthiest people. They just have a quality that makes us feel worthy if we engage with it, but maybe they're not actually good for us. Whereas I think with authentic, healthy love, the person we're choosing is probably going to be somebody who's also healthy and good for us in some way. But of course, like there's so much nuance to that. I don't want to give, 100% black and white, like rules to this. But I hope that makes sense in terms of attachment, like how you can tell something's an attachment and how your attachment style is triggered rather than just genuinely loving someone. But also, like, it depends on the type of relationship. It depends on the length of a relationship. Like, there's so many nuances and intricacies to it. Hi, why do I feel guilty for confronting people who have hurt me? I'm sure there's a variety of reasons. It could be, from my own experience as a recovering people pleaser, you've been told not to do that, right? You've been told not to hurt, like to tell people how they have made you feel, because it makes them feel bad to know that you feel bad based on their behavior, right? You're essentially saying that they're a bad person, but obviously it's not as black and white as that. Doesn't mean you're actually saying that, but maybe you've been conditioned to believe that that's what you're saying to someone who has never taken accountability for their behavior. So they perceive it as you saying they're a bad person. So now you've been conditioned to not want to hurt somebody in that way, even though they've hurt you, and you're just trying to stand up for yourself or tell them how you feel. That could be a reason why you feel guilty, right? Like it depends on again, your specific experience of it. But I think that's a big one for people pleasers. It's like, and maybe it has to do with self-worth. Like, who am I to decide that somebody needs to be held accountable? Like, maybe I deserve to get hurt. Maybe, like that's kind of more about self-worth. Yeah, there are a variety of reasons, really. What's another one I can think of? Guilty for confronting people who hurt you. Yeah, I think those are the two main ones. Yeah, I think it's really hard, especially with parents. Like, if you have to confront them and tell them that they've hurt you, you feel guilty because you're like, well, they're my parent. You feel bad for wanting to express that they've done something wrong to you. But everybody does by accident too. Like it's not always an intentional thing, but sometimes people can't accept that it's unintentional and still hold themselves accountable, Should I travel to South America after Asia and Australia for my gap year? Why not? If you can do it and you want to. What's your favorite book you read recently? I think I guess it depends what you mean by recently, but my favorite book that I read in the last year has been Mother Thing by a Toronto-based writer, Ainsley Hogarth. It's called Mother Thing, and it's really good. It's kind of like a horror drama type of book. It's really good. I don't read a lot of horror books. I love horror movies. Books, I tend to read more like literary fiction. But this one was just really good. Really well written, great plot. I flew through it. And yeah, I recommend it to everybody. What do you think of Thais Gibson, the counselor? Please answer. Yeah, I really like her. I actually, when I first started learning about attachment styles and understanding them, I did it through her content. I find it really helpful. It's a good starting place. And I think she puts out a lot of great stuff that is very nuanced and detailed and specific. And you can tell like she's actually worked with people who are these attachment styles, especially with the fearful avoidant attachment style, because it kind of does, everything she says, I've realized does hit home from my own experience. And I also love that she's been like doing, I think I kind of relate to her in terms of how we do our work and our content, but she's been doing the same thing for years. Like same thing, same format, same structure, like you know what to expect. It's always interesting. Like sometimes it doesn't always relate to my experience. I don't always listen to everything or watch everything she makes, but like she's just doing the thing over and over again. And she's very consistent with it. And she knows what works for her and the work she does. Yeah, and I really value that, and I respect that about her. Girl, I feel so lost. I don't even know what to do now. So now I don't want to do anything. You have to do something. Anything at this point. One thing. I know it's like when we overthink and we think we have to have everything figured out, or I should have done this back then and now it's too late. You know, it can get so overwhelming. You have to just take one step. One step. And it could be small. It doesn't have to be big. And you don't have to even have a clear direction. Maybe you just have to have an intention. Like what's the intention that you want to have for your life, or the kind of life you want to live, you know? What's the difference between a healthy ego and a fragile ego? I think, yeah, we have an ego and it's good to have one that's healthy. You know, our egos allow us to recognize our worth and our value and our importance. And those are good because they're healthy for us and they're healthy for the people that we engage with, right? Because if you have an unhealthy ego, a fragile ego, you hurt other people. But maybe unintentionally, but because it's so fragile and you're so insecure, you can hurt other people in the process while also hurting yourself. So I think, yeah, being able to recognize your boundaries, your worth, your value without it having to infringe on anybody else's, or without having to tear other people down to make you feel better. You know, sometimes you might hurt other people when you set certain boundaries because those people don't want to have boundaries set. And that's different, right? But it's coming from a place of understanding your value and worth alongside other people's value and worth, right? Whereas I think a fragile ego doesn't necessarily want to accept that others are on the same level, right? Or others have the same value and worth, because then it means that they're not good enough. And it's like, that doesn't have to mean that at all. I think most people are pleasure addicts, and that's where a lot of problems stem from. Yes, you don't want to be a pleasure addict. You also don't want to be a pain addict. You want to be somewhere in the middle where you can understand the value of both and appreciate both for what they provide you without doing too much of either, because neither is good in excess. Do you think people can truly find themselves, or is identity always evolving? I think for me, it's more about knowing, yes, like I do think our identity is always evolving and we're always changing. We're always going to be a different person. But I do think there is a kind of uncovering of who you are beneath all of it. That is the person who watches you evolve. Does that make sense? Like there's a part of, as I've gone through this journey, right? I feel like I've sunk a bit deeper into myself to the point where I can watch myself grow and progress and evolve while understanding simultaneously all the things that I want to adhere to in terms of like values, morals, all that stuff. And I think that is what, when we say find ourselves, it's like that version, that person within us that is our kind of authentic self, stripped from anything, you know, external or any sort of like memories, experiences, whatever. It's the part of us that can watch what we're doing and say, okay, I like that, I don't like that. What does this mean for me? Why do I want to continue with this? You know, it's kind of like I don't know, what an example would be, like the CEO of ourselves, of our psyches. I don't know. I think that part of us is what we need to uncover or find. I don't think they are non-existent. Like they're there, but they're kind of hidden beneath all of the other facets of who we are. But yes, we are also evolving. And we should allow space for that. Like just because you find yourself now doesn't mean you're going to be this person forever. How to deal with fear of intimacy. You have to understand what you fear, right? What's so scary about intimacy, and why do you avoid it? Like you have to know first what the reason is before you can actually tackle it. So I can't give like a specific answer because it could be any reason for you. Did the Queen watch Scream 6? Melissa Barrera 8 in that movie. She was the final girl. No, I haven't seen it actually. Honestly, I weirdly I'm not the biggest fan of the Scream series. Yeah, I don't know. Like I get it, it's like a commentary on slasher. I'm not even like that big of a fan of slasher films, to be honest. I think I like more psychological and paranormal horror, more so than slashers. Why did my avoidant leave and then immediately see someone else and commit to them a few months in? Classic tale of the avoidant in a relationship and then a breakup. I hear it all the time. It's because they don't want to, okay, they're avoidant, right? So they avoid things. They avoid themselves, they avoid intimacy, they avoid their own truth, they avoid pain, they avoid, like, it's all avoidance, right? And so there's so many reasons, right? Like, okay, so you break up. Being in a breakup is painful. So you don't want to feel the pain of a breakup or dig deep into those feelings and pull them out at the root and look at them. Like, it's so painful to do that. So an avoidant will avoid them. And so the best way to avoid that is to be right into another relationship, because now you can get all the good dopamine feelings and oxytocin of being in a relationship again. But, you know, it's all coming from like a very, this isn't to be dismissive, but like it is like a surface level type of connection, because going any deeper is too intimate, too vulnerable. Avoidance won't do that. It is terrifying for them. It's uncomfortable for them. So that'll happen. And also, you know, I think avoidance will also exist in this realm of like, okay, relationship doesn't also necessarily equate to intimacy and vulnerability in the way some people might see it. To them, it might just be like a title, an experience, whatever. So it's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna get back into a relationship. Again, without processing the feelings of the last one, the experience of the last one, which is not good. You know, obviously very painful to watch someone do that who you've dated. But to me, when I see it, when I hear about it, it's coming from a place of not really being willing to know yourself, not even know yourself, to see yourself, to honor the experience you had by accepting and embracing the pain of the loss. You know, it's not easy. It's difficult to do that. So I can understand, as an avoidant myself, right? I'm a fearful avoidant. I understand this. I've had to work through it though, and I've been working through it. I understand the desire to want to escape from that feeling and that pain and go right back into the good feelings. But ultimately, you know, as again, I know this from my own experience, it's coming from a place of wanting to just not have to face the pain that you feel having had that end with someone. So I wouldn't take it as a reflection of your lack of worth or lack of importance to this person. If anything, it's probably that you were very important to them, and that's why they're trying to avoid the pain of ending this relationship. I'm seeing someone say, sometimes people aren't avoidant, they just don't like us and see us as placeholders until they find someone better, which sucks. That could be the case too, you know, but okay, even if that's the case, someone does that, that person is also not then a healthy person either. Like, they're also not a good, like, they're not a person you would want to be in a relationship with, because they're revealing to you that they are using people as placeholders and then jumping into a relationship with someone else that they deem worthy. But it's like, how do they even know now who is an appropriate partner for them if they are doing this kind of behavior that's for sure being stemming from unhealthy, toxic, relationship dynamics? So to me, it doesn't even make it, that doesn't really change it. Either way, you're still experiencing something with someone who doesn't know themselves, doesn't know, like, isn't really existing in this authentic space when it comes to relationships and connection. It's not genuine, you know? So it's like, it doesn't matter. Again, it's not a reflection of your worth or your value either way, because like, that's how if they're moving in those ways, why would you use their behavior to say or mean anything about you and your value? Like, what, like, their opinion isn't really that good. You know what I mean? Do you like watching anime? No, not particularly. Nothing against it. I just tend to not like any sort of, I don't really like any animated movies, to be honest. Not really my thing. But I used to watch Sailor Moon as a kid, and I loved that. I also have watched the Studio Ghibli movies. I really enjoyed those. I was going to ask if you can sometimes use interactions and dynamics in movies to coach on your videos. Um, oh, interesting. Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, I could. I'll be honest though, when I watch movies, I don't watch them from the lens of what I do because they're kind of my escape. So I don't really, I mean, I can see them, um, but I don't dive into them too deeply. Although I do love videos that talk about Sex and the City is one of my favorite shows. And I love the characters. I love the dynamics in there. Obviously, like as the seasons progress, it's not as good. I find the writing, but when people talk about the relationship dynamics in that show, I find it so interesting because when I watch it, I perceive them very differently than the way I think other people are perceiving them. And I've been kind of wanting to talk about it in some way, to share my ideas on it, but then I don't know how to like integrate that into the content I do now. But maybe I'll consider it. I do find it fun though to approach this kind of work from a different lens. I love your content. I need to book a session. I feel like attacked when you post. I'm sorry. I know. I when you talk to me one-to-one, for anyone who wants to book, I am not as like intense and like, I don't know, scary as I might seem in some of my videos. I'm trying to get the point across quickly in the videos, and I'm trying to be as like intentional with what I'm trying to say to like wake you up in a sense, in the way I speak to myself. That's how I am to myself, right? In the one-to-one calls I have, they're very casual, they're very chill. I will point things out, of course. I will ask questions to help you kind of get to certain awarenesses, but yeah, less attacking in the one-to-one calls. Do you think avoidant attachment styles attract anxious attachment style people? Yeah, I think it's kind of like it's the perfect pairing, right? Because that's exactly the only person that would work with an avoidant is an anxious person, and the only person that would work with an anxious person is an avoidant. Although sometimes two anxious people can work well together. And by well, I mean that they can make their attachment styles kind of less obvious, I guess, because they're not in complete contrast in the same way that like avoidant and anxious attachment styles are. But yeah, I do think, if you move in avoidant, like two avoidants can't make it work because they're just going to avoid each other, right? So, and no one's going to chase and no one's going to feel the need to do that. But like when you move in an avoidant way and you engage with people and you connect to the point of vulnerability and then you pull away, the people that are going to chase are the anxious people because that's just like the perfect recipe for it. How to deal with someone being passive aggressive. I think there are two ways you can approach it, right? You can either just completely ignore what they're trying to insinuate until they decide to just be honest and open about it. So you can kind of just not entertain it because they're not being mature enough with their communication, right? So you can just be like, I'm not gonna talk about it. I'm not gonna address that. I can sense that they're trying to say something to me, like, oh, do you need to? You don't have to say anything. Like if they want you to know it, they should be able to say it to you. And I think that also gives them the space and the opportunity to kind of to do that, to step up in that way. And I don't think that has to be like a malicious thing or a passive aggressive thing on your part. It's more like, I'm not going to, and I'm saying this as a person who had to work through a lot of this kind of hypervigilance, people pleasing. It's like, I'm not going to overthink the empty space between us in this passive aggressive conversation. That's not my role, right? Like that's not your job to do that. It's their job to communicate it, and then you can then respond and understand and listen, and you know what I mean? So you can do that, right? You can say, I'm not going to bring anything up until this person decides to bring it up to me, and allow them to kind of fill that gap. Or you can kind of confront it, but more in a not in an aggressive way, but in a way to clear the air and give them the opportunity to say something. And it can come from a very compassionate place. It doesn't have to come from an aggressive place, a scary place, angry, or anything like that. You can just say like, it seems like something's on your mind. Did you want to talk about something? And make it inviting. Like I think people are way more willing to be kind to you and open if you are open and inviting and not confrontational. I know it's hard. It can be depending on what the situation is too. What do you think about anhedonia? Yeah, it's an interesting concept. I can't say I know much about it other than it's just the inability to experience like pleasure or good things. I do think I think the internet and social media and overconsumption of social media can be probably part of that, because our dopamine receptors are going crazy right now. We get so much stimulation all the time. I say this from my own experience with this. Sometimes after a while, it's like your baseline has gotten so high that you can't reach it with normal things anymore. It can only be with the next kind of hyper stimulating experience. So I do wonder if it's linked to that. And I think more and more people are experiencing it now. Or maybe it's just being talked about more. I don't know. I don't know the statistics. I don't know anything about it. But I am curious to know if there is a link or connection between the two. What are you more excited for? Devil Wears Prada 2 or Freakier Friday? I think I would probably say Devil Wears Prada 2, but is Anne Hathaway in it? I hope she is, right? But yeah, I think I'm more excited for that. What do you think about fixing anhedonia? I would say, again, it's more about understanding. There could be so many reasons for it. Like maybe it's underlying health reasons. So like always go to a doctor, make sure you're getting blood work done, whatever you need to do to make sure it's not something else, something physical. But then also checking in about your habits and what you're doing. Maybe you're overstimulating yourself in certain ways that's making it hard to feel content and fulfilled with just like normal things in your life. I would say to consider those two things first. Therapy is also a great option. Yeah, just kind of tackling it from all directions if possible. You've helped me through so much. Thank you so very much. You're welcome. What should I do if I feel lost in my life? I'm 28 years old. I think, firstly, you're still young, I know that's hard to accept when you're at that age, especially when you're nearing 30. I get it. But really, in the grand scheme of things, you are still young. You still have a lot of time. I think you have time up until the day you die to change, to grow, to be different. Like, I think when we put that cap on us, the cap on our experience of like, this is us, this is where I need to go, and if I can't get there by this time, then it's over. It's like, how is that benefiting us to think that way about life? It's just going to make you feel miserable. And why are we choosing to make ourselves feel miserable in that way? I'm not saying I don't do it sometimes. I do. I get into that headspace, but it's not it's not benefiting you in any way. There's no benefit to doing that, right? So I will say, what would it mean to you to be found in your life, right? Because you feel lost right now. What does it mean for you to have direction? To feel like you're not lost? What does that look like? What would it look like for you to feel that way? Because I think often it's tied to probably career, relationships, or it depends on what it is for you specifically, what that meaning is for you, that you can then take a small action towards it. And I think the sooner you start with the action, the less you'll feel lost, because at least you're moving in a direction, right? Thank you to my moderator. I listened to your podcast recently. Can you speak more about fear of entering a flow state / time loss? Oh, yes. I think I saw a comment on it today, so I'm not sure if it was you commenting on this, but yes. I made a podcast episode about the avoidance within your creative practice can often be tied to the fear of losing time when you enter flow state. So like for me as an example, because that's where I'm pulling from, right? My own experience with it. It's you fear, okay, as a writer, right? So I'm working on a novel right now. And to do that, I have to sit down and like tune out the rest of the world so I can sit and get some words out, right? A lot of my avoidance and my block when it comes to writing is the that experience of sitting down and blocking things out and getting absorbed into the work, and then coming out of that flow state and being like, what time is it, right? Like maybe I have to go somewhere afterwards, I have to do something. There's a fear to losing track of time and getting so lost in it that you neglect other things, or you lose opportunities, or you miss things. So that fear can apply to like not just something you have to do after you write, but it can mean anything, right? It could mean I'm putting all my time and energy into this project, and before I know it, years have passed and nothing's changed, or I'm still working on it, or I think those are the fears that come up when we think about it. For a lot of us who struggle with the avoidance in our creative practice, it's also, I think, connected to the avoidance you have in relationships at times too. Well, thank you for the garland. We fear that too, right? Committing to someone means, you're devoting yourself to something, to building a relationship, and who knows how long that will take, who knows how it'll end, who knows when you get out of it. If it ends, you come out of it and it's 7 years down the line, and all of a sudden you're like, I've lost all this time, so I think that's what triggers a lot of that fear of losing time, entering flow state, like the not wanting to commit, so being 1 foot in, 1 foot out, never actually starting something. I hope that answered your question. Thoughts on waiting for love. I think there. I don't know. It depends on what you mean, right? Like, what does love mean? Because I think you can practice. I think the experience of love is one that you participate in, right? And it's one that you build and you cultivate. Because it's like, if you're not practicing being in a state of love, whatever that means for you, right? So like maybe you're really loving your creative work right now. You're loving hanging out with your friends. You're something. You're loving yourself. You're showing yourself love in certain ways. If you're not in that constant state of practice, being open to receiving love, maybe going on dates, maybe whatever, then even if you're to find someone who could give that to you, maybe you wouldn't be able to receive it in the way you would like to, or see it for what it is, because it's not in your practice. So on the one hand, I understand what people say when they say like, I'm waiting for it. I get that, we don't want to just be diverting our attention and our energy to things that we know aren't going to lead us to what we want. And I think that is important, right? Like if you're waiting for an intentional, healthy, aligned relationship, you want that, then yes, I don't think you should be necessarily going after people who you can already tell aren't looking for that. That is probably a waste of your time and energy. I'm sure you'll learn a lot from it, and I'm sure it'll be an experience in itself. But I do think that, what's the point of doing that if you already know what you're looking for? I think it also helps you trust yourself more by not doing that, by waiting for a person that you meet and you're like, okay, this person does actually align with a lot of the things I'm looking for. Great. But I do think there is something to be said about practicing being in that state in some way. Maybe it does mean dating people, or being open to dating, going on dates, whatever, to show yourself like, okay, there are options here. I'm not existing from this mindset of scarcity, right? Because that's not also healthy. Because I think when we wait for a long time and we prevent ourselves from doing things or going after things or being open to things, we then act from a place of scarcity. And that makes us make decisions that are haphazard, not aligned, not authentic, because it's coming from like a deep fear of losing something or not having this thing again. So I think it depends. Why do I have trouble trusting my partner? I think that depends on, has your partner done something to make you lose trust in them? Is there something that you're recognizing in their behavior that is untrustworthy in some way? Is this a pattern for you? Like, have you not trusted any of your past partners? Yeah, it really depends. How to deal with an ex situationship coming back. I'm not sure about them, but I don't want to miss out on another relationship. Look, I'm someone who will always, I think second chances are always a good practice. Giving someone a second chance. Sometimes you might know from the first chance, but I don't think there's anything wrong with, okay, this thing didn't work out the first time. Okay, we'll try one more time. Let's see. People are different now. We've grown, we've changed. Who knows? So you try it again. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I do think that once you do it the second time and it's the same result, or it just still doesn't flow, then you've seen what you needed to see. I think after that point, you can then, I think, confidently say, okay, this is not for me. And you don't need to keep going back. Especially if you know that it's not like circumstantial, it's more fundamental issues with this person. So I think, if it's the first time that you're trying again or considering trying again, why not? You never know. But if you've already tried again, and this is another instance where they've come back, and now you're feeling like, okay, I don't want to waste my time doing this again and miss out on a potential opportunity with somebody else, then that is also very valid. It's uncomfortable for us too. Why just avoidance? I don't know what that's referring to. But I think whatever I say about avoidance can also apply to anxious people as well, maybe in a different way though. How can someone start noticing their own unconscious patterns without getting overwhelmed? I think the overwhelm is kind of part of the process. It's going to happen. I think you kind of have to just accept that will happen. Because if you start noticing one thing, it kind of opens up the floodgates, and then you start noticing another and you realize like, oh wow, I'm kind of a mess, which is fine. But I think journaling is always, I think, a great practice. It helps you organize your thoughts, put them down on paper, not let them ruminate and stay in this kind of like abstract form in your mind that can feel overwhelming. I think journaling is a great practice to have. I think that'll help kind of keep things organized, sort them out without it being too much all at once, because you're also forced to be slow about how you're writing. You're forced to pick words, put them into proper sentences. Like it does slow down the process. So I think that could be a place to start. Went watering the astroturf she thought was greener grass, and I walked away from 7 years of use. Wow. I'm sorry to hear you experience that. You should write a book one day. I would buy it. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, right now, most of my writing is over on Substack. So I write essays about these topics. And I think that has been great practice for me and a compilation of the kind of ideas I want to one day put into a book. But I'm still in the kind of, I guess, research phase of life before I sit down and write like a proper book about something. So, but I'm sure I will one day. But right now I'm kind of, all my writing is on Substack. So if you want to read more about these things in more depth, and just have access to all my archives, they're all over there. What do you think about Carrie and Big's relationship? Do you think he truly loved her? I think Big is a quintessential avoidant, right? He likes the fantasy of things. He likes the idea of connection without getting too deep or too close. He even says that in one of the episodes where I think he said that things just got too complicated, meaning, relationships are complicated. Or he said things just got too hard. Yes. Relationships are hard. They're messy. They're complicated. They go deeper. Because then immediately after he starts dating and then is married, engaged and then married to someone he met while on a trip. So it's like literally when people tell me about, they broke up with their ex and immediately after that person started dating someone and then got into a committed relationship, it's like exactly Carrie and Big. Like that is a perfect example of exactly the same story in just a different form. It is quintessential avoidant behavior. They don't want to face the pain and the discomfort of like ending something with someone that they really liked, and it was kind of complicated because it's not, in this fantasy realm of like this is what it's supposed to look like and following a certain pattern or whatever. It requires vulnerability, it requires intensity. And so, you find someone that is maybe a little bit easier to be in relationship with as an avoidant, meaning there's less vulnerability, maybe less connection, more surface level. You can see it all in that dynamic. That's why I love the third season's my favorite season of that show, because I feel like it perfectly exemplifies the kind of relationship dynamics that are very real. Like they feel very real in that season. Even with Charlotte wanting to quickly settle down with Trey, who is like the perfect guy on paper because she has an idea in her head of wanting to get married. So she's going to find the person, and turns out he is not compatible to her, even though he was the perfect person. That's where you get the taxi cab theory from, which I think exemplifies it perfectly, right? Like her light was on. I think when we talk about the taxi cab theory online, people talk about it from the male perspective, but I think it is actually Charlotte. Her taxi cab light was on. So was his. Both of theirs was. And immediately they met each other like, oh, perfect. Perfect. We're both looking for the same thing. One person with more authentic intention than the other person, but it's like not quite right because it's not coming from a genuine place of awareness of like, okay, are we actually compatible? Is this actually healthy? It's more like, how would this look on paper to others? And it did look good, but the core of it wasn't good, you know? It wasn't true. And yeah, I love that relationship too. The third season has great relationships in it. But I do think that I think he loved her to the capacity that a person who is not truly connected with themselves can love another person, if that makes sense. I think you can't think of deep, true love as being the same for every single person because some people just don't know themselves enough to know what that even means when they connect with someone else. So it's going to be different for everybody. But I do think, yes, for his level of it, he did love her. You're such a peaceful person. Thank you. I really appreciate that. You could definitely do a video on Carrie and Big. And Big was an avoidant and actually liked. Yeah. He did. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think he is the perfect example of an avoidant too, right? Because he is very independent. He likes his own space. He likes his own time. There's nothing wrong with that, of course, but it is harder to be in a relationship with somebody who really is very adamant about that for themselves. How detached on someone. I'm not sure what that means. How can someone express emotional needs without sounding needy? You will sound needy. That's the point. You know, they are needs, and when you express them, you're saying, "Hey, I need this." So you will be needy. I think the fear of sounding needy is what prevents us from expressing our needs. You're going to have to risk it, right? You're going to have to risk being needy, being vulnerable, being seen in that, and risk that person judging you for it. But then, that'll reveal something to you about that person and whether or not they're willing to meet you where you need to be met. So be needy. Make yourself feel needed. Of course, don't do it from the intention of being unable to fill your own cup up, right? Like that's different. That's a different kind of neediness. It's like you're needing everything from the other person rather than filling up what you can within yourself and then whatever else is left that is required in a relationship with another person. That's different. Why do you think Big never fully chose Carrie? Because it would have been too much work, you know, and not in like a bad way on her part. Yes, she was like kind of, there are mixed opinions about Carrie, but yeah, she was a fully formed, messy person who meant well, but was like, you know, imperfect, and wanted connection and needed more from him. And he wasn't capable of giving her as much as she needed. And it would have required him to be different, to be more open. That's too much work for somebody who's avoidant. And so to fully choose that would mean he's fully choosing the work, being in it, like being willing to be like, okay, how can I do this? How can I open up myself more? And that means he would have to sacrifice certain things for that. So it's not about the person, like, oh, I'm not sacrificing for this person because they're not good enough for me. It's like, am I willing to just sacrifice this for myself in general? But the irony is that when he married Natasha, she required a lot from him too. Like that's the irony too of the avoidant. And I say this as an avoidance, loving. I mean this in the most loving way, but like that's the irony, right? They're trying their best to avoid having to do the work, be open, be vulnerable. So they choose somebody who they think has this kind of like simple, right? And they often refer to her as the simple girl, like this simple experience, like she's simple. The experience is going to be simple because this person's very straightforward and they're very not complicated and not overwhelming or not too vulnerable. Maybe she's also a bit closed off. So it makes it easier for that person to be involved in that. But then they realize like that, oh, I actually do want more than this, but again, not willing to do the work. So the thing that they were trying to avoid, the complicated messiness, the discomfort, they still end up experiencing because they're choosing people to try and avoid it. But you can't avoid it because that's life, you know? So it's like they jump from person to person. They bounce between experience and experience to try and avoid, but then they always encounter the same pain and discomfort. So that makes them jump to the next person. So they can't fully be in, right? They're 1 foot in, 1 foot out because it doesn't fulfill the feeling that they're trying to achieve, if that makes sense. Sorry, that's me rambling about Sex and the City. I love that show. I need to like make a video about it or something. I don't know. I lost my interest to do my job. What should I do? I mean, one, you can find another job, which I know is hard, especially in this economy and day and age. Or you can find ways to make it more interesting, which also is hard, I know. We're kind of limited with when it comes to work, if you're not doing work that's your own work. So it really depends on what would be the least sacrifice, the smallest sacrifice you can make in this situation. Would it be finding a new job? Would it mean being in this job but finding a different way to look at it? You know, it depends. Opinion on physical intimacy when it comes to platonic relationships. Yeah, I think that's okay. I think it depends. It depends on every person's comfort level. It depends on what that physical intimacy means to you and to them. I think physical intimacy is important for people in general, and we do, I think, tend to see it as more of a romantic gesture, but it shouldn't be. It doesn't have to be. Humans need physical intimacy in general, you know? Anyone have the podcast link? Podcast link is in my bio, so if anyone's interested. What the fuck? I don't even know who you are. What's your skincare, please? I look extra glowy in this lighting. I honestly, CeraVe cleanser, Pond's moisturizer, and then I use some of the Ordinary's serums. So I use their peptide during the day and their niacinamide at night. But I think it's the peptide that does this. It's really good. It has like an instant effect. How to grow confidence. Show up for yourself. Keep the promises you make to yourself. Be willing to risk looking like a fool in front of people if it means you're doing something with intention. Yeah, be willing to fail at it. Like, do something, even if it means you're going to risk failure, just to show yourself that you can do it. Like, the point is to build evidence. But if you don't do anything, yeah, you avoid failure, but that's because you're doing nothing. So of course you're not going to be confident because you're not seeing yourself being capable enough of doing things, even if that means failure. Just the capability of just doing something and being brave enough to risk failure will make you feel confident. Do you think love and validation from others as a motivational force can be healthy? Yeah, I do. It depends though. It depends on if that's the only thing that you're looking for and it's the only thing that you think will satisfy you, and then everything else is like unimportant. I think then it can be toxic and unhealthy. But I do think, of course, like we do want some encouragement from people. Like the work I do, of course, it makes it so much better for me that people enjoy it and they validate the experiences that I have and the way I express them. That makes it way better for me, and it encourages me more to do it. So I do think it can be healthy. How do I become a writer? You gotta write. You just have to write and do it and over again, and it's gonna be uncomfortable and it's gonna be annoying and it's gonna be painful, and that's the point. And you just do it. Honestly, I'm the best thing I've ever done for my writing practice has been my Substack, and forcing myself, because I have an audience on there, forcing myself to write on it consistently. because I just do it. Like I don't question, I don't overthink it. I force myself to have certain like topics ready to go, and then I sit down and I write it. And they're not going to be perfect. They're going to have mistakes in them sometimes, and that's okay. The point is to do it, to get to, so the more I do that, the more I refine my ideas, the better I get at expressing them through writing. And I know that over time, this is going to be perfect for when I write a book about these things. I'm going to have an entire archive of work that and energy and effort and skill that I've cultivated by doing it. But you just have to do it, and over again, consistently. That's how you become a writer. Do all thoughts need to be acknowledged and validated even if they are disturbing? It depends, right? It depends on the intention behind that. It really comes down to intention. Like me validating and accepting or acknowledging this thought, what's the intention behind doing that? Is it going to be beneficial for me? If it's not, if the only reason to do it is because it's going to make me feel bad about myself, and maybe there's a sick satisfaction to feeling bad about yourself and being mean to yourself, then no, it doesn't need to be acknowledged and validated, because, you know, it's more about understanding what the point is of that thought and if you want to continue it. And, you know, like, what's the intention behind validating and acknowledging it? But I think you'll always gain some knowledge and information from doing that. It just depends on what it means to you at the end of the day. Is Substack subscription based? So you subscribe with your email. There is a free subscription tier and a paid subscription tier. So I have some of my articles and essays are free. Some of them are paid. It's a great way to support me if you're interested in doing that. But I do have a lot of content on them that's free as well for you to read. Whenever I'm overwhelmed, my first instinct is to talk to someone else. I don't know what it's like to self-regulate. Yes, I think that's really important to be aware of that. The fact that you recognize that is really good, because I do think that while, of course, the point of relationships and connections is to be able to talk things out with people, if you do that all the time, that overwhelm, what you're doing is you're putting it into somebody else, because you can't regulate it within yourself and hold it and acknowledge it and accept it and manage it on your own. So you're putting it on to someone else, and that's not fair to the other person. I've been the kind of person that's done that in the past, and I've had that done to me by people, and it is very overwhelming and kind of like a mood killer, you know? It is important to be able to manage those emotions on your own. Not all of them, right? You don't want to go too far to the other side of the spectrum and never talk to people and never ask for support or help. That's not healthy either. It's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for your relationships. But you do need to be able to self-regulate. And that means sitting with the discomfort and the overwhelm and figuring out a way to release it that doesn't involve another person. So maybe it means voice noting it to yourself. That's helped me in my past. Journaling, great practice. I will say it over and over again. It really does help. I promise you, because it's like talking to yourself. It's really helpful. Why is your hair black now? I just recently dyed it a bit. I know it's a little too dark. It's a temporary dye, so it will like wash out over time. But yeah, every couple of months, you'll see my hair be a little bit darker. As somebody who is like a chronic overthinker, a lot of anxiety, I've gotten grays very young. Like I think even in high school, I started getting grays, and I'm sure that's also genetics as well. But the last couple of years, like just the chaos of things, I think has just made my hair go even whiter than normal. I don't think it always shows on camera, but like, yeah, if you see my hair a bit darker, it's because I've just done like a temporary dye. My natural hair is like a little bit lighter than this. It's more of like a medium brown. Okay, I think I'm gonna end this live here. We're trying to do these every week, so every Wednesday at around 5-ish, we're going to be back here again. So save any questions that I didn't answer, bring them with you next time. This live is going to be saved over on YouTube, so you can go watch it there if you need to. I'll also post about the live the day of on my stories, so hopefully you won't miss it. But yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for all these great questions. And I'll see you all next week. Bye.